My name is Margaret Ellison, and I'm 72 years old. For more than 40 years, I've lived in the same quiet lakeside town just outside Seattle. My neighbors know me as the woman who built Ellison Properties from a single duplex into 37 rental units across 3 counties. I'm a widow, a self-made landlord, and until recently I believed that family always meant safety. I was wrong. "Grandma, you need to go." "No." The words came from my grandson Ethan, 20 years old, normally calm and soft-spoken. That night, he grabbed my wrist with a tremor in his hand, his wide eyes filled with fear. We were standing in the middle of my daughter Chloe's elegant living room, the air smelling of roasted lamb and expensive candles. Guests laughed softly over wine glasses. Chloe's husband Derek was talking to a neighbor about the next big investment opportunity. To anyone else, it was a perfect Saturday night family dinner. But Ethan's voice shook when he whispered, "Grandma, trust me. We have to leave." I froze for half a second. I've spent a lifetime reading people, tenants, contractors, buyers, and in that instant I knew my grandson wasn't being dramatic. He was trying to save me. Just 3 days earlier, Chloe and Derek had stormed out of my house after I refused to fund their latest business venture. I had been patient for years, bailing them out of failed crypto schemes, doomed smoothie franchises, and even an online luxury car scam that cost me $40,000. But this time, when they came begging for $150,000 for a groundbreaking AI real estate startup, I said no. Chloe's face twisted with rage. "Fine," she hissed. "When we make millions without you, don't come crawling to us. And don't expect us to take care of you when you're old and helpless." The next morning, I woke up to find my white front door spray, painted in blood, red letters, selfish. That was the first time I felt a chill run through the home I had always considered safe. So when Ethan tugged at my hand that night, his voice trembling, I didn't argue. I put my half-eaten slice of cake on the table, straightened my back, and followed him toward the door. Behind us, Chloe's voice floated through the warm light of her living room. "Mom, where are you going? We haven't even poured the wine yet." Ethan didn't even look back. His grip tightened. "Please, Grandma." Now, I didn't know it yet, but walking out that door would be the single decision that saved my life. I had spent 72 years believing that blood meant loyalty, that a lifetime of sacrifice guaranteed love in return. But that night, under the soft glow of Chloe's porch light, I understood something I had ignored for far too long. Family is who protects you, not who shares your last name. Ethan's fear became my warning. His hand in mine was my second chance. The cold night air slapped my face the moment we stepped outside, and for the first time all evening, I felt like I could breathe. Ethan didn't let go of my hand as he led me down the stone steps and across the quiet street to the small parking lot next to the neighborhood park. Under the weak yellow light of the street lamp, I finally saw the truth in my grandson's expression. His jaw was tight, his hands were shaking, and his voice cracked as he whispered, "Grandma, they were going to hurt you tonight." The words punched the air out of my lungs. I stared at him, stunned. "Hurt me? Ethan, what are you talking about?" He looked over his shoulder toward Chloe's glowing windows, then stepped closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. "They put something in your wine. I saw Mom pour it in when she thought no one was looking." My heart stuttered. My mouth went dry. I had taken 2 polite sips during dinner, and already I remembered feeling slightly foggy, just enough to notice, but not enough to alarm me. What was it?" I managed to ask. Ethan's voice trembled. "I heard them talking yesterday when they thought I was upstairs. Mom said the drug would make you compliant, confused. They wanted you to sign papers tonight, something about giving Dad control of your properties." The world tilted for a moment. The laughter from the house behind us suddenly felt distant, sinister. I gripped Ethan's arm to steady myself. All the failed businesses, all the pressure for money, and now this, I whispered. He nodded, guilt swimming in his young eyes. "I should have told you sooner." I didn't want to believe my own mom could do this. The enormity of his words sank in. My own daughter, the little girl I had carried in my arms, the young woman I had bailed out more times than I could count, had crossed a line I never imagined. "Grandma, listen to me," Ethan said urgently. "We have to go straight to the hospital and call the police. If that drug is in your system, they can prove it." I hesitated, glancing back at the house where my daughter's life glowed so warm and inviting. Inside was betrayal wrapped in fine china and soft music. Out here, in the cold night with my grandson's hand gripping mine, was the raw truth. I finally nodded. "All right, sweetheart, call the taxi." Ethan pulled out his phone with trembling fingers. As we waited in the shadows, he whispered, almost to himself, "I don't think I can ever go back in there." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "You saved me tonight, Ethan. Whatever happens next, we face it together." I had always believed the worst pain a parent could feel was losing a child. But that night, I learned there's another kind of loss. The moment you realize your child chose greed over love, and that your safety now depends on the very grandchild they tried to manipulate. My heart was breaking, but under the street lamp, I also felt something new, the steel of survival. The taxi's headlights swept across the quiet street as it pulled up to the curb. I felt my knees weaken, not just from the wine, or whatever was in it, but from the crushing weight of betrayal. Ethan helped me into the back seat, his hand gripping mine like an anchor. "Legacy Hospital, please," he told the driver. Then he leaned close to me and whispered, "Grandma, call 911. They need to know what happened before the drug leaves your system." My fingers shook as I dialed, my voice trembling but clear. "This is Margaret Ellison," I said. I think I've been drugged by family at a dinner party. I need to get to the emergency room. Please send the police to the restaurant too." The dispatcher's calm voice steadied me. "We'll send officers to meet you at the hospital, Mom. Stay on the line if you feel dizzy or confused." By the time the taxi pulled under the fluorescent lights of the emergency room, the fog in my head had thickened. Walking felt like wading through water, every step deliberate. Ethan stayed glued to my side, his young face set with grim determination. Inside, nurses sprang into action. Blood pressure cuff, IV line, blood draw. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching a stranger's life from the outside. "Ma'am, we're sending your blood for a tox screen immediately," the ER doctor said gently. "Do you know what they may have given you?" I glanced at Ethan. He swallowed hard and answered for me. "Something from a veterinary clinic. My mom said it would make her docile and confused." The doctor's brows furrowed. "That sounds like acipromazine. It's a sedative for large animals. In a dose like that, it could make her extremely suggestible." The room spun for a moment, not from the drug, but from the reality that my own daughter had planned to reduce me to a signature machine, too foggy to fight back. An hour later, a pair of police officers entered my hospital room. One took notes while the other gently asked, "Mrs. Ellison, can you walk us through exactly what happened tonight?" I told them everything. From the invitation that felt too sweet to be real, to Ethan's warning, to the moment I stepped into the cold night air and realized I was no longer safe in my own family. The officer nodded slowly. "Between your statement, your grandson's testimony, and the tox screen, we have probable cause. We'll head to the restaurant now. Thank you for trusting your instincts." At 2 a.m., a nurse wheeled me out to another waiting taxi. My hands still trembled as I fumbled with my phone. A new text blinked from Ethan. "Police arrested Dad. Mom is being questioned." I told them everything. "Are you safe?" I typed back with clumsy fingers, "Safe at home. Thank you for saving me. I love you." That night, in the soft hum of my own kitchen, I brewed a cup of tea and watched the security monitors I'd installed just days ago. The streets were empty. The tulips I replanted after the vandalism swayed gently in the night air. But nothing about my life was the same. My daughter had crossed a line I could never uncross. My son, in-law had turned my trust into a weapon, and my grandson, my sweet, honest Ethan, had chosen to risk everything to protect me. As I sat in that quiet kitchen, one thought burned in my mind: they tried to steal my life's work. Now I will take back control and make sure they never hurt anyone again. There's a strange kind of grief that comes when you realize your child is no longer your family, but your grandchild is your lifeline. That night, between the hum of the fridge and the bitter taste of hospital tea, I made a silent promise they would face the truth, and I would survive this. Monday morning. The air over Lake Washington was crisp and sharp, but I couldn't feel any peace. I sat at my kitchen table, a steaming cup of tea in front of me, surrounded by hospital paperwork and the police report from Saturday night. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Chloe's face smiling over her wine glass, smiling while she tried to drug me into signing my life away. I glanced at the Ellison Properties portfolio spread across the table: deeds, rental ledgers, bank statements. 40 years of early mornings, leaky faucets, angry tenants, and endless repairs. 40 years of building an empire brick by brick, and my own daughter had decided to take it all with a few drops of veterinary sedative. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mrs. Ellison. A calm, professional voice spoke. "This is Detective Ramirez with the King County Police Department. We've processed your blood work. Esipramazine confirmed. Your daughter and son-in-law are both in custody for questioning. The district attorney is reviewing charges for attempted financial fraud and elder abuse." Hearing the words made my chest tighten and release at the same time. Part relief, part heartbreak. "Detective," I said quietly, "I want to protect my assets immediately. They will try again if they can." "I understand. A family law attorney can help with that. And Mrs. Ellison, I want to warn you. They're telling a very different story. They're claiming Saturday night was a misunderstanding, that they just wanted to talk business." I let out a cold laugh. A misunderstanding doesn't show up in my bloodstream. By noon, I was sitting in the glass-walled office of Marilyn Carter, a family law attorney with a reputation for being relentless. She listened without interrupting as I told her everything: my daughter's history of failed schemes, the vandalism, the spray-painted word, self-ice, the dinner, the drugging. When I finished, she leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Mrs. Ellison, your instincts were right. We're not just talking about fraud. This was premeditated asset theft. If they had succeeded, they could have taken control of your properties and had you declared mentally incompetent in a matter of months. We need to move fast. Tell me what to do. First, revoke any existing power of attorney. Second, freeze all accounts linked to family members. Third, prepare an affidavit documenting every attempt at manipulation. And fourth," she paused, her eyes sharp, "decide how far you're willing to go. Criminal court will handle the drugging. Civil court can dismantle everything they've built on your name." I didn't even hesitate. They tried to steal my life. I won't stop until the truth destroys their lies. That night, I called Ethan. He sounded exhausted, but his voice softened when he heard me. "Grandma, Mom's already trying to spin the story. She says you overreacted, that it was just wine and nerves." "Sweetheart," I said gently, "don't let her gaslight you. I have hospital proof. I have police reports. And soon, I'll have legal walls they can't climb over." He was quiet for a moment. "Grandma, are we going to war with my parents?" I stared at the deeds of Ellison Properties, my life's work, glowing under the warm kitchen light. "No, Ethan," I said, my voice firm. "They declared war the moment they tried to steal from me. I'm just making sure they can never hurt us again." I thought the hardest part would be surviving that night. But survival was just the beginning. When your own blood betrays you, you have two choices: collapse or fight back. I had been underestimated my entire life, but they forgot the most important truth about me. I didn't build my empire by being weak. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, the sky over Lake Washington still streaked with gray. I brewed my tea, sat at my kitchen table, and spread out 3 neat piles: property deeds, the foundation of Ellison Properties, police reports, proof of the drugging and attempted fraud, a fresh yellow legal pad for my plan to dismantle every lie Chloe and Derek had built. For decades, I had protected my daughter from the consequences of her mistakes. I had paid her debts, softened her failures, and told myself that family meant forgiveness. But Saturday night changed everything. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a survivor, and now I would become her reckoning. By 9 a.m., I was sitting across from Detective Ramirez and Attorney Marilyn Carter in the small conference room at the King County Courthouse. The detective slid a folder toward me. Mrs. Ellison, the evidence is overwhelming. We confirmed the veterinary sedative in your blood. The restaurant's cameras show your daughter refilling your glass multiple times. And the private dining room they reserved upstairs. It was set with documents prepared by a disbarred attorney. I flipped through the photographs, my own wine glass with fingerprints on the stem, a manila folder labeled Ellison Property Transfer, Chloe and Derek laughing with their friends, who were actually there as witnesses to my supposed consent, attempted fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy. Detective Ramirez said, if you want to pursue this fully, the DA will add charges for premeditated financial exploitation. I felt the familiar steel rise in my chest. Yes, I said. I want everything exposed. Every single lie. Back at home, I began what I called the Ledger of Truth. It was a thick binder with tabs for every scheme I'd uncovered over the years. The failed crypto mining scam that cost me $40,000. The smoothie franchise that ended with unused blenders in their garage. The fake luxury car business that evaporated overnight with my deposit. And now, the ultimate betrayal, the drugging and attempted asset theft. I attached receipts, bank transfers, and screenshots of texts Chloe had sent me begging for short-term loans. For the first time, I wasn't just a mother cleaning up her child's mess. I was a witness building a case. That evening, Ethan came over after class. He walked in slowly, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his eyes full of guilt. Grandma, they're blaming you for everything, he said softly. Mom says you ruined her life. Dad says they're the victims. I slid the binder toward him. Sweetheart, I need you to see this. Every dollar, every lie, every time they treated my love like a bank account. Ethan flipped through the pages in silence, his face growing paler with each tab. Finally, he whispered, I didn't know it was this bad. I thought it was just bad luck. Not this. I placed my hand over his. They chose this, Ethan. And now, we're choosing truth. 2 days later, I made my move. Marilyn helped me prepare anonymous evidence packages for every person Chloe and Derek had deceived. Lenders, business contacts, and even her elderly financial clients. By the end of the week, every single one of them would know the truth. I wasn't just fighting for my own safety anymore. I was tearing down the empire of lies my daughter had built on the foundation of my name. There's a strange clarity that comes when you stop protecting someone who never protected you. I had spent years shielding Chloe from herself, thinking it was love. But love without accountability only feeds betrayal. That week, for the first time, I understood the difference between being a mother and being someone's victim. By Thursday afternoon, the first cracks in Chloe and Derek's world began to show. I was sitting in my sunlit kitchen, sipping tea and watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes when the phone rang. It was Margaret Chen, one of Chloe's elderly financial clients. Mrs. Ellison, she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. I received some documents in the mail. They show money missing from my account. Money I trusted your daughter to handle. Is it true? I closed my eyes for a moment. Yes, Margaret, it's true. I'm so sorry. I thought I was the only one they targeted. But now everyone deserves to know the truth. There was a pause on the line, then a quiet, furious inhale. She stole $30,000 from me, from my retirement. She's going to pay for this. By the end of the day, 9 more calls came in: clients, lenders, and even a small community bank manager who had been fooled by Derek's fraudulent loan guarantees. The dominoes had started to fall. Friday morning, my neighbor Mrs. Peterson came running across the lawn, newspaper in hand. "Margaret, have you seen this?" The headline made my stomach flutter with a strange mix of triumph and grief. The article mentioned Chloe and Derek by name, describing an alleged conspiracy to manipulate an elderly family member into signing over millions in property assets. It even listed the drugs found in my bloodstream. "They'll never recover from this," Mrs. Peterson said softly, almost like she was reading my mind. That evening, I drove past their once pristine home. The driveway was empty. Ethan called me an hour later, his voice full of quiet shock. "Grandma, they're staying at a cheap motel outside town. Mom's crying all the time. Dad's on the phone with lawyers, but everyone wants money they don't have." I exhaled slowly. They built their world on lies, sweetheart, and lies always collapse faster than they rise. Saturday morning, the knock at my door startled me. When I opened it, Ethan stood there holding a plain envelope. "Mom asked me to give you this," he said, his voice low. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in Chloe's familiar handwriting. "Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope you'll take care of Ethan." I never realized how far I had fallen until I lost everything. "Chloe," I set the letter down and looked at Ethan. "You're safe here?" I told him. "You always will be." He hugged me tightly, and for the first time since that night, I felt something like peace. Emotional reflection. Watching my daughter's world collapse was nothing like I imagined. I thought I'd feel pure satisfaction. Instead, I felt the sharp ache of mourning the child I raised, who chose greed over love. But I also felt relief because the truth had set me free. Sometimes, justice looks like silence after the storm and a future rebuilt on honesty. The morning the sheriff's car pulled into my driveway, I knew life would never return to the way it was. I had seen my daughter's name in the paper, heard whispers around the neighborhood, and watched her world collapse from the safety of my kitchen window. But nothing prepared me for the uniformed man handing me an envelope marked "Notice of Hearing State v. Chloe and Derek Whitman." Inside was a subpoena. The state wanted me to testify, not just as the victim of an attempted fraud, but as the key witness in a case that could send my own daughter to prison for years. I stared at the paper, my hands trembling. For 72 years, I had worked hard, paid my taxes, minded my business. I had never once stepped into a courtroom, and now I would stand on the witness stand and look into my daughter's eyes while telling 12 strangers how she had tried to destroy me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I brewed tea, turned on my porch light, and sat in my rocking chair, listening to the autumn wind rustle through the tulips I had replanted after the vandalism. Across the dark street, my security cameras blinked silently, a reminder of the night I almost lost everything. Then came the knock on the door. It was nearly midnight. My heart jumped, and for a moment, I considered calling the police. When I peeked through the glass, I saw Ethan, pale, trembling, his hoodie soaked with rain. Behind him, under the street lamp, stood Chloe. Her once perfect hair was limp, her coat mismatched, and her eyes were empty in a way I had never seen before. "Mom," she whispered through the door, "please." Just 5 minutes. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed to slam the door, to protect the life I had rebuilt these past weeks. But then Ethan whispered, "Grandma, she's not here to fight. She's broken." I opened the door. Chloe stepped inside like a shadow, dripping water onto my hardwood floors. The same floors she used to stomp across in high heels, demanding money for the next big idea. "Mom," her voice cracked, "I lost everything. The house, the cars, my job. Derek left 2 days ago. He said he won't do prison time for me." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a wrinkled photograph. It was of me, Chloe, and Ethan at my first duplex, taken almost 30 years ago. "I don't even know who I am anymore," she whispered. But I know I became someone you couldn't trust. Someone Ethan couldn't love. I wanted to feel anger. I wanted to remind her that she drugged me, that she painted self-H on my door, that she almost stole my entire life. But all I felt in that moment was a deep, aching grief for the daughter I thought I'd raised. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. "Mom," Chloe said, her hands shaking. "I wasn't the mastermind. Derek wasn't either. We were just the desperate ones. There's someone else. Someone who coached us through the whole plan." I froze. "Who?" Chloe swallowed hard. "Your own brother. Uncle Henry." The room went silent except for the rain ticking against the windows. I hadn't spoken to Henry in over a year, but he knew everything about my properties, my will, and my stubborn refusal to retire. He had always joked that I would die clutching my ledgers. I thought it was just bitterness over his own failed investments. But now, Chloe's words twisted like a knife. He said if we didn't get control of your properties before you died, he'd never help us again. He gave us the idea, even found the lawyer. Suddenly, the betrayal cut twice as deep. It wasn't just my daughter, it was my own brother, my last living sibling, who had orchestrated this web of lies. I sat back in my chair, letting the revelation sink in. This wasn't just a family falling apart, it was a family at war with itself. And I had to decide whether to fight to the end, or to let one branch of my bloodline rot away forever. Chloe sobbed quietly in my living room. "I know I don't deserve it. But I need you to believe me. I can testify against him. I can help put him away. But I need you, Mom." Ethan sat in the corner, silent, watching the two generations of his family collide like a storm and a cliff. That night, I understood what true betrayal feels like. Not just the sting of greed, but the echo of legacy turning to poison. I could take Chloe's testimony and destroy Henry, severing the last tie to the family I was born into. Or I could close the door forever, leaving her to face prison alone. In that moment, love and rage lived in the same heartbeat. Justice demanded one thing. Blood demanded another. The rain had stopped by morning, but my house still carried the chill of last night's revelation. Chloe was asleep on my couch, curled up under a blanket she hadn't touched since she was a teenager. Ethan had stayed the night too, keeping watch like a silent guardian, his back against the wall, eyes red from exhaustion. I didn't sleep at all. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the yellow legal pad, where I had scribbled 3 words in the middle of the night: justice or blood. It was time to choose. By 8 a.m., I called attorney Marilyn Carter and told her everything Chloe had confessed. That Uncle Henry, my only brother, had orchestrated the entire plan. On the other end of the line, Marilyn's voice was steady but sharp. "Mrs. Ellison, this changes everything. If Henry was the mastermind, we can bring conspiracy charges against him. But if you protect Chloe to shield Henry, the DA will see it as obstruction." I looked toward the living room, where my daughter slept like a fallen child, and for the first time in weeks, I saw fear instead of greed. My brother Henry, however, I could picture clearly, sitting in his dark office, smiling behind his cigar, thinking I'd never find out. I had spent a lifetime forgiving family, but I wasn't that woman anymore. At noon, the police escorted me into the courthouse for a private meeting with the district attorney. Chloe sat beside me, trembling, while Ethan clutched my hand under the table. "Mrs. Ellison," the DA said, "are you prepared to testify against all parties involved, including your brother?" I felt the weight of 4 decades pressing down on me. Family reunions, shared childhood secrets, the way Henry used to carry me on his shoulders when I was 5. But then I remembered my front door, painted self-H in red, and the bitter taste of wine laced with betrayal. "Yes," I said, "I'll testify against all of them. No exceptions." Chloe let out a shuddering sob. "I'll do it too," she whispered. "I'll tell them everything Henry planned. Just don't let Ethan hate me forever." The investigation moved like wildfire. By the end of the week, Henry was arrested, charged with conspiracy and financial exploitation of the elderly. Chloe's plea deal was formalized. Reduced sentencing in exchange for full cooperation. Derek, abandoned by everyone, tried to flee the state. He didn't make it past Spokane before they brought him back in cuffs. The story hit the local news again, but this time it wasn't just about a greedy daughter. It was about a family conspiracy spanning generations, and the woman who refused to be a victim. On the day of the preliminary hearing, I walked into the courtroom with Ethan by my side. Henry sat in the defendant's chair, his face pale and angry. Chloe, in a modest gray suit, kept her head down, avoiding my eyes. The judge asked me to raise my right hand and swear to tell the truth. As I spoke the words, I felt something break free inside me. A lifetime of silence and protection replaced by steel. I told the court everything about the drugged wine, about the secret meeting upstairs with the forged property transfers, about the spray paint, the vandalism, the threats, and finally, about Henry's manipulation, the whispered promises, and the threats he'd made to my daughter. By the time I finished, the courtroom was silent except for the scratch of the stenographer's keys. The judge looked over his glasses and said quietly, "Mrs. Ellison, it appears you've not only saved yourself, you've dismantled a criminal conspiracy." That night, for the first time in months, I slept. When I woke to the sound of birds instead of fear, I realized something profound. Justice wasn't about punishment. It was about freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from guilt, and freedom from the family ties that had become chains. In the end, I chose justice over blood. I chose survival over silence. And while part of my heart will always ache for the daughter and brother I lost to greed, another part has finally healed. Ethan and I are building something honest together. An empire of integrity, not lies. If you were me, could you cut your own blood out of your life forever to save yourself? Share your thoughts below. Subscribe to Telling Story with me to hear the final chapter, where I face the hardest question of all: can you forgive someone who tried to destroy you? 6 months later, the courtroom drama was behind me, but the echoes of betrayal lingered in every quiet corner of my home. The tulips bloomed again that spring, swaying under the same sun that had shone over every chapter of my life. Yet I felt older than my 72 years, not because of age, but because I had buried the last illusions I had about family. Chloe was serving her sentence in a women's correctional facility outside Tacoma. Derek had taken a plea deal, spending his days in a work program far from the polished image he once wore like armor. And Henry, my own brother, now sat in a cell in Monroe, stripped of the charm and authority he once wielded like a weapon. They had all called me selfish. But standing in my garden, watching the wind ripple through the lake, I knew the truth. I had finally chosen myself. One Sunday afternoon, Ethan and I drove to visit Chloe. He had begged me for weeks. "Grandma, she's different," he said softly. "She writes to me every week. She says she's sorry. I think she means it now." I hesitated. For months, I had promised myself I'd never step foot in that prison. I told myself forgiveness wasn't required for peace. But Ethan's eyes, so much like his grandfather's, finally broke through the wall I had built. The visitation room was plain white walls, metal tables, the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Then Chloe walked in. I almost didn't recognize her. The flawless hair and designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple uniform and tired eyes. But in that stripped-down face, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. The little girl who used to run barefoot through my garden. Clutching dandelions like treasure, she sat down slowly. "Mom," she whispered, voice trembling. "I don't deserve to ask you this, but thank you for coming." I studied her for a long moment, my hands folded on the table. "You tried to take everything from me," I said quietly, "not just my properties, my peace, my trust, my life." Tears filled her eyes. "I know. And every night I hear your voice in my head, asking why I did it. I don't have an answer that's good enough. I was greedy. I was angry. And I thought if I could take what you built, I'd finally feel like I was enough." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting her words sink in. When I opened them, I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. Chloe, I can't forget what you did, but for Ethan and for the little girl you used to be, I can try to forgive. She sobbed, her shoulders shaking. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes shining with relief. That night, back home, I sat on the porch with Ethan, watching the lake catch the fading sun. Grandma, he said, do you think we can ever be a real family again? I sipped my tea, thinking of all the broken pieces scattered behind us. Maybe not the way it was, I said. But family isn't about perfection. It's about choosing who you protect and who you let back in. And I choose you, Ethan. Always you. He smiled softly, leaning his head against my shoulder. The final lesson of my life was simple: blood is only the beginning of family. Love, loyalty, and courage are what make it real. I nearly lost everything to the people who shared my name, but I also gained a future with the one person who never let me fall. Forgiveness doesn't erase the scars, but it lets you stop bleeding. If you were me, could you forgive a betrayal that deep, or would you close the door forever? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Telling Story with me for more stories where survival, betrayal, and second chances meet.